I was never meant to be a girl. I was supposed to be a boy. I've been a disappointment my whole life. I guess it just never possibly crossed anybody's mind. I became a hunter and a butcher on purpose. I guess maybe I'm a motherfucking monster too.
Jaguar Wright goes from breakout features to headline battles, from studio sessions to sworn statements, and from a mother in grief to a force that won't back down. You'll hear the choices and the cost that followed each one, the travel and the paperwork, the edits and the filings, and how a life split between music and justice holds together. You'll see how a performance can echo into a courtroom, and how a court date can shape a set list. You'll leave with a record you can trace. Let's get to it now. What truth would you face to win today? She was born in New Jersey in 1977 and built her voice on open mics, rehearsal rooms, and relentless shows. The early grind led to a spot with The Roots, features that traveled, and a live performance with Jay-Z on MTV Unplugged in 2001. A Coca-Cola New Soul campaign placed her face in living rooms. A debut album in 2002, Denials, Delusions, and Decisions, proved the range was not hype. A second project was delayed when a label folded and plans shifted. Tracks survived, reworked into a 2005 release, and she kept working. A European tour in 2008 showed the live engine was strong. By 2010, a new title was announced and a single landed, but the full project did not arrive. In 2019, a 5-song EP appeared and marked a return to studio focus. That is the shelf of career facts before the next hard turn. What part of your path would you keep if the ground moved under you? Then the central wound hit in 2018. Her son, Giovanni, died in Arlington, Texas, after a violent confrontation in a hotel parking lot. Police reports set the sequence. An argument, guns drawn, shots fired, a collapse, and a loss that was never lifted. The funeral was the first chapter of the next phase. From that day forward, her life ran on 2 rails at once: work and resolve. The work was music, interviews, travel, and projects in different stages. The resolve was simple: speak, name names, and do it without stepping back. A parent's grief became structured. Each year after 2018 added a mark to the ledger. The personal line stayed visible in every decision. The professional line kept moving, because stillness was not an option. What would you do if the only path forward was through the hardest room you ever entered? The years after 2018 form a ledger. In 2020, she went on camera and delivered claims about artists, producers, and executives. Each statement carried a timestamp, a venue, a name, and a direct challenge. That public phase also set up concrete responses. A denial on air, a lawyer's letter, a cut segment, a filed complaint, a printed docket number. That is how a feud becomes a record. When you ask what matters, contracts and courtrooms are where answers settle. What choice would you make if speaking put your calendar in a clerk's hands? What would you circle if every word could trigger a document by noon? By late 2024, one chapter turned into the next. An interview ran on Piers Morgan's show. During the broadcast, she delivered statements about Jay-Z and Beyoncé. Attorneys responded in writing. The host issued an on-air apology and confirmed that the segment was edited to remove the contested parts. That sequence is a matter of production notes, legal notices, and an edit decision that now lives in the show's archive. The fallout was direct: a line drawn by counsel, a clipped master, and a permanent marker on the timeline. What would you do if a door opened wide and then shut the next week? Who would you call first? Another line in that ledger is February 2025 at Mar-a-Lago. A ceremony placed a Defender of Freedom award in her hands. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn presented it. The image is simple: a stage, a plaque, a handshake. The moment verified a new role. For her team, it added a line to the resume and placed events in sequence: studio, stage, courthouse, ballroom. If you held an award while a court filing with your name on it moved forward, how would you plan your next month? Which meeting would you set first, the legal briefing or the rehearsal? April 2025 delivered the sharpest legal action to date. Brian McKnight filed a defamation lawsuit after statements she made about him. He denied the claims in full and sought relief through the court. That case is not a rumor. It is a case style, a complaint number, and service of process. Lawsuits create clocks. They trigger answers, deadlines, and options. They force strategy. When papers are served, a team meets, calendars update, and the path shrinks to motions, hearings, and dates you cannot move. The end result is not mood. It is judgment or settlement. That is the rule. In a feud built on names and dates, a lawsuit is the purest form of direct fallout. That is the heat every public claim can generate. Those beats explain where the feud sits now. The speech acts are documented. The replies are documented. The edit is documented. The award is documented. And the lawsuit is documented. Add them together and you see the shape. A sustained conflict between a veteran singer and a network of powerful names, carried out in studios, online platforms, and courts. The facts are paperwork. The stakes are personal. The trigger remains the same: the loss in 2018 that turned grief into fuel and pushed every boundary into daylight. What would you write down next if the cost of silence is higher than the cost of talk? What promise would you make if the next stamp could change your year? Jaguar Wright is at the center of that map, and the name itself carries the history. She performed with a legendary band, released albums through major channels, and held stages here and overseas. She buried a son and kept moving with purpose. She made claims on camera and stood by the words. She received an award in a gilded room and walked back outside to face a docket. She balanced studio work with legal strategy. Jaguar Wright kept the feud alive by naming dates and accepting the consequences. When you hear that name now, you can plot the points without guesswork. Here is Jaguar Wright's latest news in plain terms you can verify. Career milestones anchor the past. The 2001 MTV Unplugged performance with Jay-Z sits on record. The 2002 album release sits on record. The 2019 EP sits on record. A formal apology and edit by a television host in October 2024 sits on record. An award presentation in February 2025 sits on record. A defamation lawsuit filed in April 2025 sits on record. This is Jaguar Wright's emotional update as a timeline, not a whisper. It is today's ledger of actions and consequences. It is also a list of open tasks that must be managed against calendars, budgets, and health. What else do you want named on that list? What date tells you the most about motive? Now the feud chapter by chapter. The early phase started when statements turned into direct challenges against executives and artists. Responses ranged from denials to formal actions. A key example is the broadcast that led to counsel stepping in. Another is the filed lawsuit. Each response added weight. Words moved into records. That movement is the core of Jaguar Wright's latest news because every new filing adds a date and a clerk's stamp. It is also the core of Jaguar Wright's emotional update because the cost is measured in hours, money, and energy spent on answers. What would you write on a whiteboard if your day had to hold both a rehearsal and a deposition? Which meeting would you choose? What would you risk to make the record complete? Career facts still matter in the middle of all this. The signing events, the studio bookings, and the tour schedules are part of the balance sheet. They show that craft did not vanish when the feud expanded. Writing sessions continued. Live performances continued. Projects in development stayed on deck. The base layer does not disappear. It carries the weight. That is why Jaguar Wright's latest news always starts with the music line and then tracks the legal line. And that is why Jaguar Wright's emotional update shows the emotional cost tied to each formal action. What tool keeps you steady when the week splits between art and law? When hours are tight, which task gets the first slot? When pressure rises, do you protect rehearsal or draft emotion first? There is also the question of network effects. A statement about a powerful figure attracts attention, but the measurable part is the response that enters the record. Apologies matter when they come from a host who manages a show archive. Edits matter when they alter a public transcript. Awards matter when they modify the resume a team sends to venues. Complaints matter when a clerk stamps them into the system. Those four elements create the square corners of the story: broadcast, edit, ceremony, court. Each corner locks the feud into place. That is why Jaguar Wright's latest news is a living document. That is why Jaguar Wright's emotional update is a count of energy spent. If four corners hold a story tight, which edge would you reinforce first? How many pulls can you handle if all four corners tug at once? What strategy would you keep when the heat rises? Here is another pass through the current ledger to keep the edges sharp. October 2024, an interview, an apology, an edit. February 2025, a stage and an award that reframed a role. April 2025, a complaint filed by a Grammy-nominated singer in response to statements, with damages demanded. Each step keeps the feud active and places the next decision under brighter light. That is Jaguar Wright's latest news presented as a fixed sequence with no missing pieces. That is Jaguar Wright's emotional update presented as a cost sheet with no hidden lines. What detail would you need before you made the next call? What would you cross off the plan to protect your focus? To close this chapter, set the full picture in one line. A singer with a documented career path faced a devastating loss. She spoke with force and named names. The responses created a path through television, ceremony, and court. Those responses became the visible signs of a feud that is still active. The music continues. The filings continue. The choices continue. If you are drawn to stories where the outcome is earned, this is one. If you believe timelines matter, this one is as clear as any. What detail do you want us to unpack next? Which date do you want pulled from the record and laid out step by step? Keep the timeline clean, count the steps, and move forward with intent.